If I were to tell you to invest in a stock, you probably wouldn't listen to me. I'm a teenager and you have no reason to trust me. But if you take someone like Warren Buffett, who is very successful in his life, he owns a stock in Apple and suggests you invest. His word is more meaningful than mine. This is called the appeal to accomplishment fallacy, and it involves using opinions or actions of an accomplished individual as proof. Now, I'm an accounting major at Rider University, and the idea of appealing to accomplishment comes up very often in the business world, which is why I'm talking about it today. Being aware of this fallacy is important to make the right decisions in the business environment and the world. Today I'm going to talk about how this fallacy affects success, judgment, and confidence. So let's take a closer look at success and its downfall with the appeal to accomplishment fallacy. Success is one of the main drivers of the appeal to accomplishment fallacy. Napoleon I was a French leader who conquered much of Europe during the 19th century. He crowned himself emperor after seizing political power in France in 1799. Because of his continuous success, he continued to invade various coalitions of European nations and expanded his empire. This success made him think he was unstoppable and would have all the power in the world. However, after a failed invasion of Russia, his throne was renounced. His sudden failure ruined his mindset. A once unstoppable leader was put to rest after invading one country. Instead of resting, he briefly returned to power in his 100-day campaign, in which he faced another defeat. So tying this in with the appeal to accomplishment fallacy. He was accomplished, and he believed anything he did was going to work because of his great army and success. But what ended up happening, what happens with everyone, is that there's always going to be someone better and smarter. It is the basis of evolution. People are born with new technology that gives them an advantage against the previous generation because they are native to technology. If you look at my generation versus my parents' generation, which would be Generation X, I believe, born in the 60s and 70s, they had to adapt to the technology that I currently use. So they're actually technology immigrants. If you look at the technology I use, like I have a phone, they didn't have mobile phones when they were growing up. So they actually had to adapt to this new technology versus me. I grew up with it, so I'm native to this. So tying it back in with Napoleon, Russia was the country that actually defeated him. Russia wasn't necessarily more intelligent, but they had access to better technology and were prepared for the circumstances. Now that I've talked about success, I'm going to talk about judgment with the appeal to accomplishment fallacy. Judgment is a very important concept with this fallacy. Let's say you're in a game. If you win, you get to advance to the next round, but if you lose, you are out. You are winning until halfway through the game when you make a mistake that shifts the tide in the opponent's favor. This causes you to judge yourself. You get frustrated with yourself and angry. Despite all of this, you still win the game. However, because you judge yourself for making a mistake, you won despite all of that. The destructive emotions cause the game to be more difficult and stressful than it ever needed to be. So instead of having a clear mind and winning, your mind is clouded. You could have easily won the game without these emotions. However, because you had these emotions when you succeeded, you interpreted that they helped you win. This can happen in almost any field. If you are a student and are trying to study to pass an exam and are anxious and nervous and still manage to pass with an A, even though you aced the exam, the emotions were displayed actually hurt your success. What hurts it even more is subconsciously you connect the emotions of anxiety and nervousness with success. So for future exams and tests, you'll experience the same cycle of emotions and success. Granted, you study. Now, this is shown in almost any field. It can be athletes, it can be schoolwork, it can be work. If you succeed and you have anxiety, you might tie these connections together that they work. When you're anxious, you succeed. But the case is you might actually succeed when you're not anxious, but most of us are too scared to try. Now that I've talked about judgment, I'm going to talk about confidence with the appeal to accomplishment fallacy. Confidence can be controlled dramatically with this fallacy. One of the definitions of this fallacy goes like this. Person 1 presents evidence against claim Y. Person 1 is told to shut up until person 1 becomes as accomplished as person 2. A great example of this would be something like Warren Buffett saying, I have had great success in the stock market, so believe me when I tell you it can be a great way of living. This silences someone who may have had a better idea than Warren Buffett, but he thinks his success gives him authority. That person that might have had a good idea now doesn't think it will work for whatever reason and doesn't follow through with it. Now this idea could be a multi-million-dollar idea. I mean, this guy could be the next Steve Jobs, but if he's in a room with Warren Buffett and Warren Buffett says no, my idea is better, more people are going to listen to him. Because of his success is actually uses an authoritative measure, and that's not the case. The other way of putting the definition is that you have no right to talk about a topic unless you have accomplished something in this field. This is seen often in the business and medical world. An example of this would be if a pre-med student is looking at a patient and thinks something is wrong with the patient, but the doctor who has the degree immediately dismisses that idea because they are a student. I've actually experienced this firsthand. If I've had an idea I worked at an internship, if I had an idea and I said it to one specific guy, he would actually kind of suppress my idea and say it wasn't that good. But then I would find that he might actually go say it to his boss, and his boss is like, hey, that's a really good idea. But don't worry about that. We worked it all out, and we figured out, it ended up working in my favor in the end, is all I'm going to say. So in conclusion, being aware of the appeal to accomplishment fallacy is important to make the right decisions. Many people in my age group will see this firsthand when going into the business environment and almost any other environment. But it is important to make sure it doesn't happen to you and it doesn't affect you. The appeal to accomplishment fallacy will affect success, judgment, and confidence if you let it. But will you let it make you or break you? Thank you.